At the end of the book of Numbers, the people are preparing to enter the promised land after 40 years in the wilderness. Before Moses starts to speak about military strategy or leadership or the challenges of conquering and settling the land, he starts with a discussion of vows. Why interrupt the narrative with laws about vows? Well, before a people can build a nation, they must first become a community whose words can be trusted. Armies may defend borders, laws may establish order, and institutions may provide structure, but none of this can endure if people no longer believe one another. Every healthy society rests upon something far less visible, but infinitely more important: trust. And trust begins with the sanctity of our words. Our tradition does not treat speech as merely a way of exchanging information. Words create reality. The opening chapters of Genesis tells us that God creates the universe not with physical force, but through speech. And God said, again and again, and God said. Creation unfolds through divine words. Human beings, created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, also possess the extraordinary ability to shape the world through language. We bless and we curse. We comfort and we wound. We teach, we forgive, we encourage, we inspire. We create marriages with words beneath the chuppah. We enter contracts through promises and establish communities through commitments we freely undertake. Speech is never merely speech. It creates relationships. That is why the Torah does not simply command us to keep them. It says, Lo yachel devaro. He shall not profane his word. The object being protected is not only the vow itself, but the person's word. Our words possess a kind of holiness, and when we repeatedly fail to keep them, we diminish the integrity of our own speech. Eventually, our words lose their value because others no longer know whether they can rely upon them. These concerns run through Jewish tradition. The Torah repeats later in Deuteronomy, when you take a vow to the Lord your God, do not delay fulfilling it. Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, echoes the same teaching. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it. Better not to vow than to vow and not fulfill it. The sages extend this principle even further. The Talmud teaches that the Holy One exacted punishment from the generation of the flood and the generation of the dispersion. Likewise, God will exact punishment from one who does not keep his word. Even where no court can enforce a promise, Judaism insists that there remains a profound moral obligation. A person's character is revealed not only by what the law requires, but by whether their word can be trusted. Maimonides likewise teaches that a wise person's speech should always be reliable. He writes that one's yes should truly mean yes, and one's no should truly mean no. Integrity is measured by consistency between what we say and what we do. There is an enormous spiritual power in becoming someone whose promises need no elaborate guarantees, because one's reputation itself is the guarantee. And where do we first learn this lesson? It's not in school. We learn this at home. The family is the very first place where words become either trustworthy or empty. Children learn very quickly whether promises actually mean something. Things like, I'll be there, or we'll do this tomorrow, or you can count on me. Those simple phrases shapes a child's understanding of trust long before they understand law and ethics. And everyone who has raised or is raising small children will know they won't remember where they left their shoes 5 minutes ago, but they will remember a promise you made weeks or months ago up till the minute. Likewise, every marriage depends not only upon affection, but upon fidelity. Not simply the fidelity expressed in wedding vows, but the countless promises made quietly over a lifetime. These are the invisible threads that hold a family together. It is not coincidence then that as the Torah begins preparing the Israelites for life in the promised land, it begins with the laws of vows. Before they build cities, before they establish courts or cultivate the land, or create a new society, they must become a people whose words can be trusted. Covenant begins with faithfulness, and every lasting society is built upon the confidence that a person's word has meaning. Before we can speak about loving our neighbors, strengthening communities, or tikkun olam, repairing the world, we must become people whose own promises carry weight. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs developed this idea beautifully through his understanding of what he called a covenantal society. He explained that societies have been organized in different ways throughout history. Some are built as empires. An empire is held together by power. People obey because they fear authority or coercion. Others function primarily as markets. A market is held together by mutual advantage. People cooperate because each party benefits from the exchange. There is nothing inherently wrong with markets. They generate prosperity and innovation. But markets alone cannot create trust, loyalty, or shared moral purpose. A covenant is different from both. A covenant is not sustained by force, nor merely by self-interest. It is sustained by mutual responsibility and faithfulness. People honor one another because they have freely entered into a relationship or commitment. They recognize obligations that cannot simply be reduced to legal contracts or financial transactions. No, covenants depend on trust. That is why the Torah's language is so important. Contracts may be enforced by lawyers. Covenants are sustained by characters. Markets require regulations. Covenants require integrity. Laws may compel outward behavior, but only moral commitments sustain the inner fabric of the community. Those are the beautiful teachings of Rabbi Sachs, and he often reminded us that the Hebrew Bible presents Israel not as an empire or a merely political state, but as a covenantal community, a people bound together by promises made both to God and to one another. We live in times where words have become abundant, but often inexpensive, not to say cheap. We send hundreds of messages every week. We post opinions instantly. We click accept without reading, promise to call, and we forget. We make commitments casually, and sometimes withdraw them just as casually. Technology has made communication easier than ever before, but easier communication has not necessarily produced deeper trust. Ironically, as trust decreases, we produce more contracts, more regulations, more disclaimers, and more legal protections. Every transaction requires pages of fine print because a handshake is no longer assumed to be enough. Yet, no legal document, however detailed, can replace the simple confidence that another person's word is reliable. The Torah invites us to recover something our culture desperately needs. Imagine how different our homes would be if every promise mattered. Imagine how different our congregations would be if every commitment carried genuinely weight. Imagine how different our workplace, our neighborhoods, and our friendships would become if people knew that when we spoke, they could believe us. No nation can endure unless its people trust one another, and trust always begins with something as simple and as sacred as a word. May we be known as people whose promises are dependable, whose commitments are steadfast, and whose words reflect the holiness with which God endowed human speech.